And it's now my honor, on the behalf of the Academy of Sciences Crafoord Prize Committee in Mathematics, to present this year's laureate in mathematics, Claire Voisin. And the citation reads, "For outstanding contributions to complex and algebraic geometry, including Hodge theory, algebraic cycles, and hyperkähler geometry." And first a little bit about the laureate. Claire Voisin was born in Paris, where she also studied at the École Normale Supérieure, and also defended her PhD at Orsay under the supervision of Arnaud Bouville, who is also here today and will give a talk later in the morning. She was then a researcher at CNRS, at very many different institutions in Paris, Orsay, Jussieu, IHES, École Polytechnique. And then she was also professor at Collège de France, and is now back at Jussieu at the Sorbonne University. And she has been very productive and tremendously influential, and also received a long list of awards, of which some are listed here. For example, she was the 6th mathematician to receive the CNRS Gold Medal, which is the highest scientific research award in France. Now I would like to say a few words about the subject, algebraic geometry, which pertains to polynomial equations and the geometry of their solutions. So here is a very simple example. It's a cubic equation. So there are solutions in R2, in affine real plane. And there's this picture here in blue. But as you can see, it's missing one point at infinity. It's not a compact curve. So what we would like to do is to embed this in projective space, which I've done here below. And you homogenize the equations. Now it's in 3 variables of degree 3. But then we also add the complex solutions, and then we get this torus, Riemann surface of degree of genus 1. But Claire Voisin's work is really about not just about algebraic geometry, but connecting it to all other subjects. And when we consider smooth projective complex varieties, we can also see them as complex manifolds. And they're also special in the sense that they are Kähler manifolds. They carry this Kähler form. But then we can also forget the complex structure and see it as a differential manifold or as a topological space. And I'll say a tiny word about Hodge theory. And I'll start here from the right. If we have a topological space, X, then we can have its singular cohomology, which are some abelian groups. If it's a differential manifold, we can also see them as de Rham forms, or also as harmonic forms. And with the complex structure, we have PQ forms, so we have a more refined structure. And the magic thing about Kähler manifolds is that the de Rham cohomology splits up with its Hodge decomposition into the PQ parts. And we call this a Hodge structure on the cohomology. But then we also have something special about algebraic varieties, that we have also Chow groups, algebraic cycles, which are subvarieties, so things defined by equations. This Chow group of codimension n cycles are subvarieties of codimension n up to rational equivalence. And then there's this marvelous connection between the algebraic side and the cohomological side with the Hodge theory that we can, given by the cycle class map, so relating algebraic cycles with Hodge theory. And to kind of illustrate this, I'm looking at the quintic Calabi-Yau threefold, given by this Fermat-quintic equation. And I've written down here the Hodge numbers, which are an array of numbers. The dimensions of this space is HPQ. And here, highlighted with red, is in the middle part are where P equals Q, which is where the cycle map lands. So the cycles kind of pick out some part of the cohomology. And the Hodge conjecture, which is one of the 7 Millennium Prize problems selected by the Clay Mathematics Institute, is about this connection. And it states that the cycloclass map with rational coefficients is surjective. So what this means is that every PP class, which is rational, is a rational linear combination of subvarieties. And this is wide open, but Voisin is one of the few mathematicians that has managed to make significant contributions on the Hodge conjecture, and it inspires lots of her work. There's also possible to relate, so this is about the surjectivity of the cycloclass map, but it's also possible to say something about the kernel or conjecturally. And one such description is the Bloch conjecture, saying that the kernel of the cycloclass map is also described by Hodge theory, in this case the Albanese variety. So let me come to some contributions of the laureate. She has, as I said, her work is inspired by the Hodge conjecture, but she has also worked in many different fields of geometry. So if I start first with her PhD thesis, it was about the Torelli theorem for smooth cubic fourfolds. So that says that cubic fourfolds are determined by the Hodge theory, by the Hodge structure. She has also proven several cases of the integral Hodge conjecture. So this is what I had on the previous slide, but with integral coefficients, which is known to be false in general, but it's interesting to know when it actually holds. Some kind of cases. And she has also given some case of the Bloch conjecture. And something which I really think is wonderful is this, what I wrote here, the Liouvre problem. So using ideas from algebraic cycles, so the so-called Chow theoretic decomposition of the diagonal, she has given a very useful method to determine when varieties are not rational. So this has become a spectacular breakthrough in this area, finding new examples which are for example, unirational but not rational or stable rational. She has also investigated the boundary between complex geometry and algebraic geometry. I showed before that projective varieties are Cayley manifolds, but not every Cayley manifold is an algebraic variety. And we have Hodge structures for Cayley manifolds, so we could ask, well, does the Hodge conjecture hold for them? And Claire Voisin shows that the answer is no. We can't hope for the Hodge conjecture in the Cayley geometry. And she also answered the Kodaira problem, saying that not every Cayley manifold is the deformation of an algebraic variety. They don't even have the same topology. And there's also many other beautiful results in different fields. So these are just some of these. And one striking feature of her work is that it involves so many different classes of algebraic varieties. It has been curves, like in the Green's syzygy conjecture, surfaces, threefolds, fourfolds, K3 surfaces, Calabi-Yau varieties, hyper-Cayley varieties, rational varieties, varieties of general type, and so on. And to summarize her contributions, I have given new and extremely original contributions to very difficult problems that have been open for a long time, for decades. And she constantly pushed the exploration of algebraic varieties in original and new directions. And when she studies Hodge theory, she does it both from an algebraic and analytic viewpoint. And here are some quotations. She's really the leader in the field of complex algebraic geometry, and gifted with a unique geometric insight, and so familiar with Hodge theory that it's been called her playground. And let me finally mention that she has also written 2 books on Hodge theory, which has been very influential and introduced many generations of mathematicians to the subject of Hodge theory. So by this, I would like to end by congratulating Claire Voisin to the Crafoord Prize in Mathematics. I look forward to hear and read about many new results in the future.
So thank you, David, for this very beautiful introduction. I would like also to thank the Crafoord Foundation for of course, awarding me this magnificent award. And I am very happy to give a talk in this beautiful auditorium and to see so many friendly faces. So the subject I will be discussing today is much more elementary than what David presented, because in fact there will be no Hodge theory. I'll start with some fundamental, but elementary topology. So if you have Z, which is a differential manifold, which is compact. Of course, this is just a real geometry, and I need oriented of dimension D. Then Z has a fundamental homology class. And so that implies that if you have now a submanifold, again in the real setting, so this one being of dimension D, and this one being of dimension N, then again I want Z to be oriented, compact. Then I can push forward the fundamental homology class of Z. Okay. And that gives me a class in the homology group HD of X, Z. But now if I assume also that X is compact oriented, then I can use the Poincaré duality. So I can use by Poincaré duality to identify this group to Hn minus D of X, Z. And the resulting class will be, if you like, the cycle class. This is the codimension. Okay. So, of course, I work in complex geometry, but this setting works very well in complex geometry. So we will be working with complex manifolds, say compact complex manifolds. And in that case, they are all naturally oriented. So the orientation was, of course, important to construct the cycle class. But in complex geometry, they are naturally oriented. Now, if you have a Z, which is a complex manifold of a complex dimension D, of course, it will provide a real-oriented manifold of real dimension 2D. So now I do the same construction, but if I have a Z contained in X, where both are, so this is a complex manifold, maybe a compact one, and here it's a complex submanifold of complex dimension D. Here the complex dimension would be N. This construction will provide me this cycle class that has been mentioned by David. And now this cycle class is in H2n minus 2D of x z. Here, the multiplication by 2 is simply, as I said, because the real dimensions are just twice the complex dimension. Okay, so we have this construction. So, what is a complex submanifold? Okay, it has to be closed. Closed for the topology, defined by a locally defined by holomorphic equations. And of course, we want it to be a complex submanifold. So you ask that to satisfy the Jacobian criterion. Which means that locally you can define your z by exactly n minus d holomorphic equation with independent differentials. And that means that these complex manifolds, they generalize naturally to a closed analytic subset. A closed analytic subset is just the same thing. It is closed topologically and locally defined by holomorphic equation, but you remove that condition of smoothness. So usually they will be singular, but still they are not that bad. If Z is an irreducible closed analytic subset, irreducible, that means that it cannot be written non-trivially as a union of two closed analytic subsets. Then you can remove from Z its so-called singular locus, which is a closed analytic subset of smaller dimension. I write Z thing for the singular locus. This is a complex submanifold of a certain dimension that will define the dimension of Z. Okay. So, and then and of course, so this here it's a dense open set. And the cycle class, it's something that needed a lot of effort to be defined. And it was first defined by Borel and Effliger. So they define the cycle class, extending the cycle class defined for complex submanifolds. So for the closed analytic irreducible of complex dimension D. Yes, so I want to say about that. Yes, so at that time, the proof of Borel and Effliger was rather involved. They used stratification. But now, so later on, Hironaka came with his desingularization theorem, and that made some sense that stratification approach that allows to simplify the construction of the cycle class. So so Hironaka decimalization, it comes in 1974, I believe. So it says that given your Z, which is singular, you can construct a smooth complex manifold with a holomorphic map to Z, such that tau is an isomorphism and so is an isomorphism over the smooth locus of Z. And once you have this, you can define, of course, now this one, it is a compact complex manifold, and you have its fundamental homology class, and you can define the fundamental homology class this way. So in any case, we arrive at the conclusion that we have two subgroups. So X will be again a complex manifold. So it's very compact. So we get two subgroups. So C will be the codimension, N the dimension, and D the dimension of the cycles. Two subgroups of H2C of XZ, namely here it's just given by topology. Here it's the subgroup generated by cycle classes of submanifolds of codimension C. So when these brackets means that I consider the subgroup generated by these classes, and no, sorry. Here I consider indeed instead the subgroup generated by cycle classes of closed analytic subset. And here this is a subgroup generated by classes of a closed complex submanifolds. Okay, and so the Borel-Lefluger question. So assume that X is projective. I'll say in a minute why you make this assumption, or why it is natural. Do we have, so is any cycle class smoothable? That is, do we have the equality? This equality H2C of XZ. So the question is asking whether, so given a class that is by definition written as a combination with integral coefficients of cycle classes of closed analytic subset, can we write it as a combination of classes of sub-manifolds? And so, in order for this question to make sense, you have to assume that there are many cohomological relations between classes of closed analytic subset. If you consider a general compact complex manifold, even a Kähler one, there are very few closed analytic subsets, and it is likely that there may be no cohomological relation between them. So it's quite easy to construct counterexamples in the case where, in the non-projective case, simply because you do not have enough closed analytic subset in general. So the second point is that I use this terminology of ALGE, while the introduction was about a closed analytic subset. But in fact, there is this beautiful theorem by Cho saying that in complex projective geometry, the closed analytic subsets, they are the same as the closed algebraic subsets. So that's why I used that terminology here. And now, it turns out that we completely know the answer to that question. But finally, it took a lot of time before it was fully answered. So and so in fact, the answer completely depends on C. So there are three cases. The codimension 1 case, which is one of the great achievements of algebraic geometry. This is the theory of divisors. We know, and this is already here that you see that you need the projectivity assumption. In the codimension 1 case, we are looking at hypersurfaces, and we know that if you have a hypersurface, maybe it is singular, but then by adding to it a very, very positive hypersurface, then you can deform it to something that is smooth. So basically, I would say that this is a consequence of a Bertini theorem that produces a lot of smooth hypersurfaces. And then there have been many counterexamples to constructed over time. In the case where the codimension is none greater than the dimension. Okay. So I will leave to Olivier Debar discussing these counterexamples. I just mentioned one thing. The first counterexample to that was produced by Hartshorne, Rist, Thomas. So that was the first example. And in that case, the argument was completely topological. I mean, topological obstruction in the sense that that was an example of an algebraic class, typically the C2 over the Grassmannian G3, 6, for example. We know it is algebraic, but it is not even in the subgroup generated by classes of smooth submanifolds, without any mention of complex structure. So it's really, the obstruction is really purely topological. And the other counterexamples that have been found later on, they are of a very different nature, less topological and more on the side of algebraic geometry. And finally, the last result, which is the subject of my talk, is the fact that the answer is yes in what I will call the Whitney range. So it's a joint work with Collard. If we have an affirmative answer, so H2C of X Z alge is H2C of X Z alge smooth. So I call it the Whitney range, in the sense that this is this condition here. This is the condition that appears in the this is the numerical condition appearing in the easy Whitney embedding theorem. And you will see very well in the proof where it is used, and finally where we know. I mean, it's really the condition is really the natural and essential. Okay, so I want to give an idea of how we did this. Before. I would like to explain that there was a result of a similar nature proved in the case 3, but with rational coefficients. So that's something that came much earlier. So this is the fact that this statement 3 was known with rational coefficients already by work of Hironaka and Kleinman from 1968. So well, it appears in a paper by Hironaka, but Hironaka acknowledged the help of Kleinman to prove this. So let me say even the more precise statement that so X smooth projective over C, then you have the precise, so let's again, n is the dimension of X, D will be the dimension of cycles, C C will be their codimension. C-1 factorial H2C of xz ALG is contained in H2C of xz ALG smooth, assuming, of course, the Whitney condition. That 2D is smaller than n. And so Kleinman later on proved even a better result, namely he can, I think that also works for 2D equal n and maybe 2D, also 2D plus 1 equal n. So he has an improved result, but the argument is rather different. So I am going to explain the proof of this, that is, we'll say, a mixture of very deep ideas and elementary arguments. So, in fact, the Hironaka paper was not about that. It was indeed about proving that result with integral coefficient and for dimension 3. But here, this is a statement that appears as a little secondary, that appears in the same paper, which concerns the Q coefficient. So he mentioned that argument, but indeed, you're right, the case of D equal 3 is another earlier work that I should mention. You're right. But so what I want to explain is rather the proof of this. So let me, for this, introduce, I am going to sketch the proof of this. So let me introduce this notation. So this is the subring generated by the Chern classes Ci of E, where E is an algebraic or analytic that's the same. Vector bundle on X. And now there is a formula going back to Attia and Hirzebruch that says that or Grothendieck-Riemann-Rohr, so it's a particular case that says that if you have a Z contained in X, so of a codimension C, then C-1 factorial times the class of Z, and then you have to, so I say that this belongs to H2C of XZ CH. And the reason is that, in fact, if you multiply this by -1 to the C-1, what you get here, it is the first non-zero Chern class, which appear in codimension C, of the structure sheaf of Z. So there is this formula that goes back, that already appears in that paper. And then, of course, you use, so this is only a coherent shift, so you use locally free resolution. Of course, this is far from being an algebraic vector bundle, but using locally free resolution, these things, they belong to that ring here. So this is the first step, and then the second step, and the second step is to observe that H2C of xz ch is contained in H2C of xz alge smooth. Again, if you have the Whitney condition. If, so that is, so if D is smaller than C. So let me explain this, because this is the easy geometric part where you really see that we are close to the logic of the easy Whitney embedding theorem. So why this is true here? Thank you. This is always the same condition, sorry. I mean, that's always the same Whitney embedding range. So why this is true? The point is to observe that this subring is generated by Segre classes of vector bundles, algebraic vector bundles. The Segre classes, so you see etc. By definition, this is the inverse of the total Chern class. So the C of A, it will be 1 plus C1 of A plus, and it stops at the rank of A. So you invert formally the total Chern class, you get the Segre total class. But the Segre classes, they have an easy geometric description. Namely, suppose that the rank of A is R. You consider the projectivized vector bundle, P of A over X. Here you have the Hopf line bundle, or the dual of Hopf. And so you have C1 of L, which is the divisor class. Okay. And the Si of A, there are pi lower star of C1 of L to the R minus 1 plus I. So in conclusion, the Segre classes, they are obtained by pushing forward classes which are in the subgroup generated by, in the subring generated by divisor classes. And the push forward is via a smooth morphism. Okay. And now, of course, this is a product of divisor classes. And now this is here that we really see the Whitney tape argument. There is the following proposition. Let F be a smooth projective morphism. Well, assume both y and x are smooth. And let Z contained in Y be a smooth complex manifold of dimension D and in general position. So maybe I am not going to. So that means in general position, that means that Z is a general member of a family. That moves a lot. And the general member passes through two general points. The tangent space can be fixed arbitrarily. What is important for me is that this will be satisfied by a general complete intersection. Of very ample divisors. Okay, so maybe you can replace your Z by this. Then, F restricted to Z is an isomorphism. If, of course, the Whitney condition is satisfied. So, and the proof here is exactly like in the easy Whitney embedding theorem. What you do, you first embed the manifold in a very high dimensional R to the n, and then you take a general linear projection, for example, and you show that it remains an embedding. This is just by a counting argument. And the proof here is exactly the same. Okay, so I don't have to say more. So altogether, this finishes the proof of the Hironaka-Kleinman theorem, and I would like to explain the variant that led us to Kolar and myself to proving that theorem. Of course, I use somewhere the fact that this intersection of divisor classes, they are generated by intersections of very ample hypersurfaces. So the work with Kolar starts with an easy observation, which is an improvement of that proposition. Namely, let's give a definition, which is not the right definition, but it will be okay for that talk. So let's say that a holomorphic or algebraic map. So between smooth projective is not very important here. It is. It's flat if it has an equidimensional fiber. That is, all fibers are of the same dimension. Dimension of y minus dimension of x. This is not the right dimension, the right definition of flatness for general morphisms, but that is okay for morphisms between smooth varieties or smooth analytic spaces. And the key point in our proof is the fact that this proposition works. It's true when you replace your smooth morphism by a flat morphism. So so the proposition is true with f flat instead of smooth in this assumption. So the reason for that is simply that when you have a morphism, which is not smooth in general, you can stratify the space above the y by the rank of the morphism. Of course, if it is smooth, so the stratification is trivial, the rank is everywhere maximal. But the point of a flat morphism is that the rank, the stratification by the rank is rather good. We have a good control of the dimensions. And after that, you see, the proof, things like that is just counting dimensions. So the conclusion is that, well, we can have this. And so this, so now we can rewrite this proposition, or rather the variant, in the following form. So the definition. So I will denote by H. So let me write it like this. Okay. So so it will be again a subgroup of the group of algebraic classes. Okay. So is the subgroup generated by as follows. So you consider f lower star of the product of divisor classes. Okay. For so okay, so maybe I should take this and for any flat projective morphism with y smooth. Okay, so I consider all the y which are smooth, a flat morphism from y to x, and I push forward intersection of divisor classes on y. That gives me here this is a flat lower star of a class of a Chern tape. Intersection of divisors, it's okay. And so we can rewrite this proposition in the form So, so maybe let's give it a name. It will tell us that H2C of x z flat push forward is smoothable if we are in the Whitney range, that is okay. And so, in fact, the true theorem that we are proving in our paper is this result. That, in fact, that we have the equality we have the equality for any codimension. Okay. So you see that we prove that this is a sort of a structure theorem that I think that could have also other applications to the study of positivity of cycles, for example. We prove that any cycle can be realized as a flat push forward of intersection of divisors. Under a flat morphism from a smooth variety. And furthermore, in the Whitney range, we will apply this further implication to conclude the proof of the main theorem. So I consider in some sense this result as more important, even if this one solves, of course, a classical question. So let me explain maybe one or two steps in the proof. How are we going to prove this? The point is that, you see, these cycles, they are stable under certain of obvious operations. For example, it is very clear that if you have a flat morphism, say flat projective with x prime also smooth, then phi lower star of these groups. 1 minute. Okay, sorry. Is contained. Okay, so they satisfy a sort of obvious stability results, or maybe the codimension is changed. Okay, so that's somehow obvious from the definition because the composition of two flat morphisms is flat. But the key point to proving this result is that we are going to show that these groups, they are stable under more operation, push forward operations. Well, there are also stability results that it's very clear that if you intersect a cycle like that with a class of Chern tape, you will remain in the same group, etc. But the most important So the most important non-trivial stability result is this, that if you have now the inclusion of a smooth hypersurface, then the G lower star of cycles of flat push forward tape Okay, so you see now the inclusion of a hypersurface, it is not a flat morphism, so we did something non-trivial here. And that statement, in fact, it has plenty of corollaries. It's like methods of dévissage. So the corollary is the following, that if W contained in X is zero locus smooth, zero locus of a section, transverse section of a vector bundle, on X, and now you consider the morphism also absolutely not flat from the, so this is the blow up of X along W. Then this tau lower star will preserve cycles of that tape. See, sorry. So we have stability under this, and finally the last point of the proof is now I will use finally only that corollary. So we have a final. The final step is this. So well, you have a Z which is in X. Maybe it is singular. That was our starting point. But we just do this. We choose a desynchronization. And this desynchronization, you can certainly embed it into. Okay. So now this Z tilde, now it is smooth. And obviously, if you look at the definition of this flat push forward, it suffices to prove that the Z tilde is of a flat push forward tape. And now we have the, okay, so now it's for any smooth, okay. Okay, so both are smooth. Then so that was the first reduction step to the case where the Z tilde is smooth. There exists a sequence of blow-ups. Okay, and the key point is that the tau I, they are the blow-ups of this tape. Oh, sorry. By this I mean that I allow only to blow up zero locus of a section of a transverse section of a vector bundle on the y I-1. And the proper transform Z tilde belongs to H2C of so it's the same codimension. Sorry, so it's a dimension. Let's see. So what I'm saying is that the class of the proper transform belongs to. So it's here. Okay, so I think that is finished.